Okay, so right now I have quite a few render passes here, but bear with me. I'll go ahead and go over each of them. And first, I'll just start with the basic ones. So this one is my object ID pass. It's the same thing as basically an alpha pass. So what I can do here is I can separate the background from the character in case I want to change the background, re-render the background, or re-render parts of the character, and I don't want to change anything in the background or the character respectively. So I just kind of I separate those two out so I can have something to work with. What I do is I go ahead and just copy that over into an extra layer and then copy it over to a channel where I will be able to select the white areas. And then if you go over to channels here, you can kind of see this. You see over in channels, we'll kind of have the RGB, but if we have this in an extra channel, you just control click it and you can select the character, and you can use this for masks and really anything you want. The next one I'm going to go over really quickly is ambient occlusion passes. I made two of them, one with a 10-inch radius and one with a 2-inch radius. You can really see the difference. And I guess technically these aren't ambient occlusion passes; they're actually dirt passes from V-Ray, and ambient occlusion is a bit different, or the calculation I think is a bit different. But I use these as an ambient occlusion pass in any case because it's very similar. And so basically what you notice as is this one has a more overall shadowing, and this one is a lot lighter and more constricted, but still very sharp in the areas where it is existing. And so what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to I wanted to control the sharper areas and also be able to control the lighter or the wider overall ambient occlusion as well. So I made two passes, and what they do is they kind of accentuate the shadows. So when you add this as a multiply layer, it'll really help things out. So we can go over that as well. And then we basically have all the different shader passes. And the first thing you'll notice about these is they're really dark. That's because you remember we set all our renderings to a gamma of 2.2 and they were exported at gamma 1.0. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring up levels by clicking Control L, and then we're just going to offset this to 2.2. And now it's giving us the kind of level that we need. So, okay, so this is the base that I'm going to use for the entire image. I'm actually going to go ahead and gamma correct all of these really quickly. So you can see they get quite a bit brighter. And you don't always have to work in gamma 2.2 space. I just have kind of adopted it recently and have found the joys of it. So the joys being that it kind of gives you more overall lighting without having to oversaturate areas. Okay, so we have kind of two basic ones. You see I kind of added a gold one here. That's just because I wanted a few areas to kind of have this gold or bronze tinge to them. So I went ahead and rendered out those areas where there wouldn't be any car paint and just kind of combined two passes into one so I wouldn't have to re-render twice. So for this one over here, you can kind of see I have perfect car paint over here, some kind of metal, blackish metal material right here and right here. Perfect metal over here. I actually have some smoothing areas right here that you can see, but I go ahead and paint those out so it's not a big deal. I just sample this color right here and paint up, and then sample this area and paint down, and it fixes itself, or I fix it, but it's really easy. And then I kind of have this really shiny tubing in right here, which we will go ahead and play with a lot later. And I kind of have this metal area right here, which will be completely changed, but we'll go over that later. So here's our perfect one. Don't want to save that. And then we have our kind of scratched up car paint, so you can see everything is less reflective and less glossy, but still kind of the same colors. I made everything a little bit darker just to kind of give me a more overall feel to it. And what I've done is I've actually made the tubing here brown. And I figured that for this, so I was trying to merge different passes so I wouldn't have to keep rendering out different passes for each material and different objects. So the brown in the tubing is going to serve as a kind of a dust map or a dirt map. So I can go ahead and paint in dirty areas, and since it already has shading to it, we don't have to worry too much about that. So I can close that. And basically now I have three different versions of a reflective map of the entire guy. So this one's a little bit brighter. This one does not have anisotropy on. This one does. That's kind of the main difference between these two right here. And the main reason I rendered this one right here is because for this reflective guy over here, the anisotropy was kind of causing a little funky reflections right there, and I didn't know whether or not I wanted that, so I rendered this guy out just in case, which is okay because I had more to work with. And you can see for these ones, in order to get a quicker render out, you can kind of see they're a little bit splotchy right here. It's because I use less samples in the image sampling and as well as the shader samples. So it's less quality, but since these ones are going to be kind of only shining through at certain areas, it didn't really matter. They'll never see the whole thing and know that there's a huge problem. So, or it's not really even a huge problem, that there's a problem at all. So yeah, I use three, but you could easily just render out one. So these two are practically the same. We'll go ahead and close them. And actually, I'll leave this open just for comparison. And this one is basically just the same thing, but a little bit less glossy and a little bit darker. And I suppose a little bit less reflective. And I just use it here and there. I don't, at this point when I rendered it, I didn't know what I want to use it for, but I knew maybe I wanted to use it. So I just rendered it out just in case, just to see whether or not I wanted it. And so here it is. Okay, so now I am going to kind of take you on a very basic, I'm going to give you a very basic walkthrough of how to achieve a composite like this. Okay, so before I even did the final render, what I actually did was I made a render test, and I wanted to test whether or not the composite would work. So I went ahead and just made a very simple mesh with I wanted a hard edge so I could test hard edges as well. So I kind of beveled that in a bit, and you can see it's basically just comprised of a few different layers. So I will just go over those. So first of all, we have our base paint layer. We have the underlayer, and then this is my dirt map that I used. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and copy this layer, and I'm going to do everything on top of this base one. So I can go ahead and copy this over here by just Control A, select all, Control C, and then we'll just go ahead and paste it over here, Control V. And I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to make the layer mask completely black by inverting it. So we hide everything. And now, so I need to paint out areas that are scratched or messed up. And the way to do this to make it look real, or like it's in the real world here, is to use real world photos. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually just going to go ahead and grab the alpha channels that I had in this comp to make it a little bit quicker. But you can see right here I have like this texture that's kind of grimy and grunged up, and it looks kind of complex, but it's not. All it is a picture of concrete at high contrast. And to make here's another texture right here with kind of scuffs over here, metal texture scratched up and stuff. And the way to make it high contrast so we can sample it and isolate areas is you can just click Control M to get curves, and then you can adjust the curve to make it something that you would want to use. And you really have to the way to do this is basically just to play with it. That's how you're going to get the best results. So just go ahead and play with it and see what works better. Like something a healthy medium is okay. Like this is too much white, so we kind of want to go over here, and that's maybe a bit much. And so that looks pretty good. So we could use that if we wanted to. But I'm just going to go ahead and use this one that I have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this over here. And then you control and click the alpha. Come back into the RGB. And so we have now this kind of selection. You can see the little ants marching across the screen. So I want to go ahead and select my layer mask. Grab a brush. And for this brush, I'm just going to kind of use a kind of little scratched up brush that I've downloaded from some random place. You can find these all over the place. And I think actually Photoshop comes with a few brushes like this, but yeah, you can find them pretty much anywhere. So, I mean, and you can actually use just a regular brush as well. And, but anyways, so I have the ants, and it's really hard to see things. So I can just press Control H, and what that does is hides them. And now with those hidden, we can actually go ahead and start. Let's make our color white, and then we can go in here and start just kind of painting in scratches. And you don't have to be too accurate about them. And you can see these ones are kind of actually a bit they're not as scuffy as I'd want them. So I can just come in here, and actually I'll just come over here. I will grab a different alpha, perhaps this one, maybe this one. Actually, this one looks pretty good. So I'll just go ahead and drag this over here, select it, and then hide the selection so I can see what I'm doing. And then just kind of paint in these scuffs and scratches and stuff. And so it's kind of hard to see where the scratches and scuffs are in a way. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit hard to see. So one thing we can do is actually we can add an adjustment layer. We can go into curves, and if you hold Alt and click in between these two layers, this curves layer will only affect the layer it's directly above. So, and then we can adjust the darkness. Oops. So just pull the curve down a little bit, and it gives us kind of a darker effect, which makes it feel a little bit more like scratch paint, I guess. And so I want to go ahead and you'll notice I actually applied, since I had something selected, I applied my my mask to that curve. And I don't want to do that. I want the curve to be 100% white, so I can just go ahead and fill the curve mask. So I'm going to come back into the mask that we're painting on, reselect our alpha, and then start just kind of painting in different damaged areas. And one of the things you want to pay attention to a lot here is where would there be damage? And the answers can be anywhere, but what we're going to want to say is we would normally have damage in areas that are sticking out or protruding, such as this corner right here on top. And the areas that would be less damaged but contain more dirt would be the areas that are kind of down, hidden away from the harsh world. So that's basically what we'll follow. And then you can add cool little doodads here and there, wherever you want to go to fix that out. But so we can go ahead and just start messing up this, kind of messing up the background layer. It's because I'm not using a mask, but we could use a mask. But just for the demo, it's a little bit easier not to go ahead and use it. So we can go ahead and just kind of paint in and out areas over here, going in between them, trying to find different damaging things. And you can use a bunch of different masks to get really creative. Really anything goes. So we kind of have this overall damaged area. I'm going to go ahead and damage this just a bit more over here. All right, there we go. So now we kind of have like a base layer of damage, something really simple. And then what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and add our very highly scratched one. So we can go ahead and just grab this. And again, we're going to do the same thing as we did last time. So we're going to go ahead and paste the layer on top of there, add a mask, and invert the mask so we completely hide it. And now we're just going to go ahead and select one of our masks, or one of our alphas, excuse me, and then hide it. And then we are going to go ahead and start painting in the very small scratches. And the way I like to do this is by just kind of, so we have areas that are damaged, and the areas that are already damaged is where the deeper scratches are likely to be had. So we can go ahead and just kind of add scratches there. You really have to play around with the scratches you want to make. This alpha is not the best for that. This one is not either. I'm going to go ahead and grab one that, and the best one for scratches is this one right here because it looks like scratches, so that'll make things a lot easier. So I've already I have a high contrast one right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it over and select it. And then we can just come back in here. Make sure you have the alpha selected. And then we can go ahead and just paint on those. So we're going to go ahead and damage the outer areas a bit right here, because these are the areas that would get hit most. So we can go ahead and zoom in. It's okay to go ahead and zoom in, but just make sure you keep zooming out to make sure the results that you're getting are good, and kind of work with the overall thing. And you don't really want to, like, strokes like this are really bad because you can tell it's flat. So if you're going to do something like that, you would really want to kind of follow the curvature of the mesh. So kind of like go down there and then kind of come down like that. That'll really give you something that looks more like something that would actually happen. So we can just go ahead and add scratches everywhere. I wouldn't put too many scratches right here. This is where kind of I would put a lot of dust. But yeah, we can add a bunch of scratches everywhere. And like one of the things that really helps with the illusion is to kind of follow the curvature. Even if you're not over here, it's following the curvature is usually a good idea. Because I mean, even you could have a scratch that's like that, but it makes it feel pretty flat. So you'd kind of want to follow the curvature, whichever way it goes. And then some of these scratches you can see, like this isn't really working well right here. So what I can do is go ahead and hide that out. And then I can come down into our alpha and readjust the curves to make it even sharper. So what we can do is we can go ahead and something like that. And it's really just hit and miss. You have to try it, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, try something new. That's really the way you have to go about it. So I don't really like how that's working. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just come in here and grab the original. So I'm going to go ahead and grab here, drag this over, transform it a bit. It's a bit large, so I'm going to go ahead and transform the whole thing. So here we go. And then change the curves, or levels. Levels works as well. It's the same thing, really. And so you select, hide it, go back to our RGB, and then go ahead and paint in the damage. You can get kind of nice overall scuffs here. And you're going to want to put a lot more time into it than I am into this demo. This demo is just kind of showing the procedure, but it'll take a lot more effort to get a really good looking result. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and since this mask is you can see it's smaller than my actual working area, and I want to scratch it up over here, what I do is I go ahead and hold shift and drag a little triangle to add to the selection. And that just makes it easier so I don't have to find in between these dots. So when I press M to grab the selection tool, and I don't have to kind of try to grab in here. I got lucky there, but like if you grab right there, it'll just start a new selection. So what I do is I add to the selection somewhere that I know I can grab. And then I press Control H to hide it again. And then we can just go ahead and use this to scratch it up a bit more. Kind of go in here and follow around the edges. So again, I'm losing it, so I need to drag it up here a bit. So you can see using the mask really does make things a lot easier and just allow us to get a nice kind of overall scratched and dinged up look. And again, since you're working on the mask, just use black and white and just switch between black and white to get good results. You could do this forever, but I think you get the general overall idea. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add the dirt layer. So I can go ahead and just copy this over. Again, mask it, and invert the mask. And then we're going to use something that would look more like dirt. And that's actually, this one right here kind of looks a little bit dirty. So you can go ahead and select that. Go ahead and get a broader brush. And just kind of paint in areas that would be really dirty. I want to kind of paint in over here. And then make sure I don't overstep the bounds. because it'll fall really flat. Kind of push that back a little bit. And then you can just kind of go over everything and add a little bit of dust here and there. And the dust is the last thing you add because it's a thing to most likely be on the top layer. But yeah, and so you can add dust where there would be dust. So crevices, such as right here, probably on the bottom more, there'd be a lot more dust because of the contact with the ground, since the ground is kind of dirty. So it's kind of a place where there would be quite a bit of dust. And you can just apply it really wherever. So that looks pretty decent. And subtlety is the key, really. Don't go overboard with things. I've gone a bit overboard here to illustrate what I'm doing, but you can see the overall effect. And then one final thing is an ambient occlusion patch we'd put over this just to kind of accentuate the shadows. So, all right, so I've gone ahead and actually pasted an ambient occlusion pass on here. It's very subtle. It'll help just to kind of settle things down. It'll help us feel the sphere's contact with the ground with the shadow down here, and give us kind of a nice effect in here. So what we want to do is we want to set this to multiply, and you can see what it does. It just basically accentuates the shadows. All right, so this is a very basic example of everything. You can see right here we've gotten actually a lot more detailed. I've added a few overall color change maps to kind of make it a bit more vibrant than it already is. And another thing we can do actually is if you're done with the image and you're kind of finished, to give it kind of a camera effect, you can copy the image, collapse everything with Control Shift E, and it'll give us this nice just one layer. And then we can go into Filter, Sharpen, and sharpen it to give us a kind of a harsher effect. I believe I've actually already sharpened this one, so it looks over sharpened. But and even if it does look over sharpened, you can press Control Shift F, and you'll bring up a fade dialog, and you can fade that back a little bit, so we can fade it back to like 40%. And then a few more things. So one of the things I would add is vignetting, an effect from the camera. So what we can do is we can go ahead and come into lens correction. We can turn off grid to make it more viewable, and I'll actually drag this so you can see what I'm doing. So one thing we want to add is vignetting. So we can go ahead and I've already done it to this one as well, so it's getting overdone, but it's okay to illustrate the effect. And just play with these two settings here to get a kind of nice little black fringe to the image, and it also helps to kind of focus us in on the center. And chromatic aberration is kind of an effect where the channels don't really line up with each other in the image, and I'll kind of overdo it so you can see the red fringe right here. This does happen when you actually take pictures in the real world, kind of with lower quality cameras, and we do not want it. This is way overdone. What we want to do is we want to keep it to maybe like 5, or maybe even less, like maybe 3, but that looks fine, so I'll just leave it there. And finally, one final thing I would actually do is add a little bit of noise. And again, this noise is going to be very subtle. 2, I think that might even be too much. You can see quite a bit of noise here. So maybe like 1. It's just something that's very subtle, so you can, it just kind of makes it feel more like a photograph. And the viewer won't know what it is, but all these little things kind of help to bring it into a more photographic look. All right, so we've kind of gone over the basic steps of how to do it. You can see this very, very basic example right here. So now let's go over the actual comp that you see on the DVD. Okay, so this is the final composite that I actually used. I just want to go over the basic layers that I created here and kind of show you the buildup of everything, because after a while it gets kind of complex as to what I'm doing, so I want to go over it. But basically you see the main things. You see we have a background. We have a basic car paint shader, kind of. A more messed up car paint shader. A extremely messed up car paint shader for all the scratches everywhere. Like everywhere. Like this guy doesn't get a moment's rest. And then we have the dirt layer. And then I have some kind of metal areas for all of these. And just different integrations. So it's really broken down into a few different areas, and I'll go ahead and show you the build-up process of this. So I'm going to go ahead and basically turn off all of my groups. I group everything so you can kind of see what's going on. At the top I have my textures, and that's basically just the textures that I use to paint in scratches. I just wanted to have them on a separate layer so I could continue to copy them over to channels and kind of get the ones I wanted and keep making new ones. So I have those up at top, but I'm going to go ahead and turn those off. And I have my ambient occlusion passes, which just kind of accentuate the overall shadows. The rubber dirt, which is pretty simple. The text, and that's just kind of like this area right here on the tubing and stuff. The base metal scratches, so that's basically everything that didn't have car paint on it I consider a base metal. So it's kind of just the overall messing up of the basic metals. And then we have deep scratches, which are these right here. So you can see that kind of takes away a lot. And then we have our base layers. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these. What's going on? I actually separated the background out as well. You can see he's kind of got like, it's like a ghost standing there. But I wanted to make sure that I could manipulate both the character and the background independently of each other. So, all right, so the base layers are pretty much, they're pretty simple. I have the basic character, like you see. I can zoom in here a bit. And then what I've basically done is, since I didn't have the gold areas right here, I painted in these areas using masks. So if I turn off all of these really quick, we can just go ahead and do a build up. Okay, so base color is just that. It's the base character, as you saw in the composite. Nothing really special going on here. And you can notice the gamma is messed up too, which is corrected in a layer above. And now we have, I'm actually going to go ahead and turn that on so you can see what's going on. So we'll gamma correct that. And then this was used so I could actually go ahead and change the tint. If I wanted to, I could change the color of the character. I rendered it out as red, but luckily a lot of the reflections are pretty white or black. So you can't really tell that the sky is turning orange or something crazy like that. It's not really noticeable because the reflections are pretty black and white. And so that makes it great because we can change the overall look of the character. We can go basically to whatever color we want without having to re-render, and that's just it's fantastic. But I ended up using the color that I started with, just cause. And then so we have the kind of other base layer here, and what I did here is I painted in some of those gold areas from one of the composites you saw. I painted those in to areas that I wanted them. Kind of guessing where I wanted them. They ended up being here and here, so that's lovely. And then I added in kind of the metal areas that I wanted, so I kind of paint in these areas right here. And it's really just testing to see which areas look good with what. And then see if this layer, very subtle. This is just basically the tubing was a little bit messed up, or the tubing itself was like a little bit dark, and I wanted to accentuate it, I wanted to bring it out. So what I did was I duplicated the base layer and then painted in a map that you can see right here, following the tubing, and then added a levels to it, so I could increase the levels and kind of bring out the tubing to make it a little bit more visible. And then I added the chrome layers, and so you can see like this keeps changing because I'm not really sure what I wanted at that point. And I decided that this is the chromes are really, I don't know, chrome is pretty, and so I kind of paint all the areas that I want chrome. So that includes this down here, a few extra areas, like these right here, I believe. Yeah, so these little kind of cylinders change. The outer areas right here change. So we're getting kind of closer. It's still very basic. Again, I changed the chest cylinders, just always changing stuff, and change the hue and saturation. I just wanted to bring these out a little bit. And now I kind of thought that there would be maybe like oil or some kind of like fuel in here, and what oil does when it is on a surface and light is touching it, it is the light gets diffracted into various different colors. So what I did is I add a few layers here that kind of change the overall tint, and the way I do that is I just painted in a mask like the one you saw before of the areas I wanted to be affected, and then I changed the layer to color. So all it does is it really affects the color of the layers under it. But actually, I'll show you what this picture is. It's just a picture I found on the internet. I'll disable the layer mask. And essentially what it is it's just a picture of oil on the ground. And then I masked out the areas I wanted, changed it to color, and then turned down the opacity a bit. So I have that in a few different places. Basically in the tubing areas, because that's where I figured most of that would be going on. In the areas in the tubing and connected to the center chest piece, so you can kind of see a little bit of that going on right here. Actually, that's a little bit too much, but I do it very subtly on the tubing. And I think subtlety is really what adds to everything. Making things subtle is what kind of makes it more realistic. They won't know why it looks good, but they'll know that it does look good. So I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to go through these scratch layers. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a bit so we can see the full character and just kind of break this down. So I'm going to take off all the deep scratches. And now we're going to go into the smaller scratches. So you can see kind of we have basically it's we just went over everything and added little scuffs everywhere, and it basically just looks like little brown marks, like little maybe dirt marks or something like that. But it does mess up the reflections, so that's good. That's kind of what we want, is to kind of scuff up the reflections a little bit and make it imperfect is really what we're going for. So I went ahead and added those, and I actually added a second layer to make it more pronounced because I felt that it wasn't as pronounced as it should be. So what I did is just duplicated that layer. And then I thought that some of the, if I disable this layer mask here, I thought that some of these were a little bit too much, like right here. It felt just a little bit too much. So I went ahead and added a kind of an overall, I grouped those layers and then I added a mask to that group so you could see kind of what was going on. So I'll go ahead and go back to my layers. And after I had these kind of like basic scuffs in there, I went ahead and I added the overall scratches. And this was probably the most time-consuming part. And I went kind of overboard because I was having a lot of fun, but I really messed this guy up. And the way that these work is, so they are essentially you can see kind of the mask that I painted here. It's pretty complex, and it took quite a while. But it's essentially in all the areas that could get dinged. So the kind of edges of areas, maybe this would chip because if you pull this piece off and like you're working on the armor, for example, you pull this piece off and it maybe pulls these areas out a little bit, chips them a bit. So like kind of areas like this where you'd be pulling, areas that stick out like edges. So those areas were the areas that would be messed up. And I actually have a bunch of layer effects on this as well, just to kind of accentuate the areas. So I'll just gonna go ahead and turn those off and turn them back on so you can see like how big of a difference they make. So I have bevel and emboss on, and I just kind of give it some depth because this is a comp, none of this has any depth like it should. It should have a bunch of like there should be, well, if something's scratched, there should be an indent, and I don't really have that because everything's rendered out at the same level. So I need to kind of cheat to give that effect. So I use a bevel and emboss layer, really basic. An outer glow layer, that's just to build up the outside to make the outside areas that aren't scratched a little bit darker. So when we do get to the scratch, they get more pronounced. An inner shadow layer, it kind of does the same thing, but I'm adjusting the fall off a bit differently. And then a drop shadow is kind of the same thing. They all kind of do the same thing. They accentuate what's already there. And then I just play with the layers, the curves layers, to kind of pull these out. This is the gamma correction. So without this, it looks like it shouldn't look. It looks darker than it should be. But with the gamma correction, it looks okay. And then I just added a few more layers with clipping mask enabled. Remember, clipping mask is you just hold Alt and click on it. And what it does is it confines that layer. You can see it's kind of messed up right now, but if I confine it to the layer that I want it to be, it only affects the scratches. So what I did was I went around with just kind of a weird messed up brush and painted in areas that I wanted a little bit of more bump to. So I went and painted some black areas in, and then I clipped it so it only appears to be rough inside the scratches. All right, and so then I went on to a few more scuffed areas. That pretty much covers the overall scratching and digging of the guy and general overall, where you can see a few conscious decisions. For example, around the fingers, there's a lot more scratching, and around the feet, there's a lot more scratching. That's because that's how it would be when he's touching stuff, coming into contact. The paint's going to scratch off more. Same with the feet, touching the ground all the time. There's hardly going to be any paint on the ground. Now, basically, we have this bare metal down here, and what I wanted to do is scratch that up a bit. So what I did was I just basically made a curves change, and if I disable the layer mask, you can see that, and actually turn it on, you can see that it brightens everything completely. But with this layer mask, I have certain areas masked out that I want it to affect. So when I have the layer mask, disable the layer mask, when I have the layer mask enabled, you can see it's only kind of scuffing up these areas. If I'll turn the layer off, you can see the changes that it makes. And then I kind of wanted to go over the whole character with a few light scratches and a few dark scratches. And I did this the same way as I did the deep scratch layer. I just used alphas. And in certain areas, light and dark. So I went ahead and made the alpha, moved it to where I wanted, hit it, and then started painting in certain areas. It's just kind of an overall little effect. And I added a darken layer too. So both ones, they both add to it. Lighting custom. I don't think this does anything. We can zoom out just to make sure though. Okay, so this is a very custom layer. What I'm doing here is going into here and saying, since these are so deep, they need to have, they're really flat, so they need to have some kind of depth to them. So what I do is I went ahead and just painted in, since the light is coming from, it's more so coming from this angle than from this angle, so I painted some white areas over here so that light would catch when the groove is coming back out right over here, and then where the light is occluded more, since the light's mainly coming from here, I put little dark areas right here. Just a little effect, nothing too big. And then, okay, so plastic scratches is, I figured this area is kind of plasticky, which is, I don't know why they would invest so much money in this guy and maybe have him plastic, but he is, or these areas are. Maybe they just like ran out of money at the very end of the process, and they need to use plastic instead of really cool metal. So I just added a few little like chippings, and paint on plastic kind of falls off in a different way. It doesn't really flake. It more just like comes off in huge clumps. So that's what I kind of did to these areas right here. I just have an inner glow effect to kind of sharpen these areas. You can kind of see what it looks like without that. It's kind of flat, so I just kind of add an inner glow effect to accentuate those areas. All right, so those are our deep scratches. Base metal scratches, it's going to be the base metal area, so basically this area right here. So I'll turn it completely on and you can see the differences. But basically it's a really simple layer. I used a lot of the masking like I did before, but essentially what I did was, here, I'll just turn off all the layers right here, is I use this mask here, again, using my masking, or using my alphas, and a combination of alphas and painting mask to get this. used those masks and used effects. I used drop shadow and inner shadow, and you can see what they do is really a lot of help. They add a lot to the kind of like overall singed effect and burning effect to that. So it's really a good idea to play with layer styles and see what you can get. They really do add a lot. And so basically what I'm doing is this is a basic metal, and I wanted to add a little bit of like the gold or bronze in there. So I just kind of copied the layer that is the gold and bronze layer, and used masking and drop shadow and inner shadow to achieve that. And this is levels correcting it, but I thought that the uncorrected one looked better. The uncorrected gamma looked better, so I went ahead and used that. And then I threw on some oil diffraction to those. So nothing too special, nothing too fancy there. Okay, now we're getting into this is really the home stretch. The text is really simple. It's just text flowing along here using the type tool. This bad boy right here. It's nothing too special. I wouldn't worry too much about it. I kind of added also a grunged up layer right here of caution tape, and it was done using the same process as everything else scuffed. A combination of alpha channel selection and masking to achieve that. These are the same thing. I just made some type and tweaked it to the area. One thing you can do actually is if you create a path and then you want to type something on it, you can actually go ahead and so you make the path, and then you can go ahead and bring your cursor over to the path, click the type thing or the type tool on top of it, and you can type on top of it. You can't see the text right now because it's under a bunch of layers, but it's there. So I'll go ahead and undo that. So now what I did is I went ahead and did the rubber dirt. And actually I put all the dirt in this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and turn each layer on individually so you can see what's going on. So the rubber dirt is, it's just that. It's the areas of dirt that are on the rubber. So for these, it's basically darkening these areas right here and kind of adding singed effects and just things like that. General grunge stuff that you see, and it has inner shadow on as well, so you can gives it a nice singed look to it. I kind of like it, so I leave it on, and then I go ahead and pull that out a little bit with levels to get it to the correct gamma. A bit of oil diffraction, nothing too much. And then for the overall dirt, I'll go ahead and zoom out for this so you can see it a bit better. The overall dirt is basically dirt on the entire character. It kind of softens everything up and pulls it back to that kind of overall dirty effect. And then from there on out, we just have the basic stuff. We have the ambient occlusion passes. I'll show those. I'll turn those on so you can see what's going on. And actually the group is set to multiply, so I'll go ahead and go pass through so you can see the ambient occlusion pass. So I'll go ahead and turn that to multiply and tone it back to about 53% or somewhere around there. And then I have a smaller ambient occlusion pass, like the 2-inch ambient occlusion pass that you saw. And that's it. That's what makes up this character. I'll go ahead and zoom in a bit. So you can see it's not that complex. It's a lot quicker to do it this way rather than to actually make the textures and render it out. It'll take a lot more time to, because keep in mind, this character doesn't have any UV maps. So it'd take a lot more time to UV this character. And actually, I would think it'd be quite difficult to UV this character considered how high resolution it is. So I opted to go the composite route, and it worked out pretty good. So this is really the final result that we're going to get on this. It turned out pretty good. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope you learned a lot in this DVD, and I hope you had fun as well. All right, take care.